They thought my land was their dumping ground, like it was just some forgotten patch of dirt behind their perfect little world. And I'll be honest with you, I probably would have let it slide if they hadn't made it so damn clear they didn't think I mattered. But the moment I realized it wasn't a mistake, it became personal. I live just outside a neighborhood called Silver Ridge Estates, one of those places you don't accidentally end up in. You have to earn your way there, or at least pretend you did. Big houses, polished driveways, lawns so perfect they look fake, like someone vacuumed them every morning. You know the type, where the garbage cans disappear 5 minutes after pickup, and nobody waves unless they recognize your car. Now me, I'm on the other side of their fence, literally. 10 acres of woods, rolling downhill behind their backyards. Old oaks, thick brush, a dirt trail I carved out myself years ago. It's quiet out here, private. The kind of place where you hear wind before you hear people, and that's exactly how I like it. I bought this land long before Silver Ridge ever existed, back when it was just fields and a couple of old farmhouses, before the developers showed up with their glossy brochures and promises of elevated living. I kept to myself when they built it. Figured, hey, good for them. They get their version of peace, I keep mine. We don't bother each other. At least that's how it started. You begin to notice little things when you live next to a place like that. The way certain folks look at you when you drive by in a truck that's seen better days, or how they slow down just enough to make sure you notice them not waving. It's subtle, but it's there, like they've already decided what kind of person you are. Still, I didn't care. I had my land, my space, and honestly, I liked the contrast. Their world was all straight lines and HOA rules. Mine was whatever nature decided that day. Everything stayed that way until early spring last year. One of those mornings where the air still had a bite to it, but you could feel winter loosening its grip. I grabbed my coffee, headed down the trail to check my game cameras, just part of my routine. And that's when I saw it. At first, it didn't even register, just this unnatural shape near the fence line. Then I got closer, and it hit me. A massive pile of yard waste, grass clippings, broken branches, chunks of drywall, even what looked like old decking boards, just dumped there, pressed up against my fence posts like it belonged. I stood there for a minute, just staring at it, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. My first thought was, okay, maybe a landscaping crew got lazy. Maybe they didn't realize where the property line was. It happens. But something about it didn't sit right. The way it was piled, too deliberate, too neat in some places, too careless in others. So I walked back up, pulled the footage from one of my trail cams I had angled toward that section of fence, and yeah, that's when things shifted. It wasn't one crew. It wasn't even one homeowner. 3 different houses, 3 separate days, same landscaping company truck. I watched them back up to the fence, unload everything, and just toss it over like they were clearing off their own driveway. No hesitation, no checking, no concern. One of the guys even laughed, like it was a joke. That's the moment I felt it, that quiet kind of anger that doesn't explode right away. It just sits there, heavy, settling into your chest. Because it wasn't about the mess anymore. It was about what it meant. They knew exactly where they were dumping it, and they didn't care. Now I could have just called the county, filed a complaint, let someone else handle it. But something told me that wouldn't fix the real problem. People like that, they don't learn from paperwork. They learn when something disrupts their comfort. Still, I gave them a chance. That same afternoon, I drove up to the main entrance of Silver Ridge. Gated, of course. You need a code or an invitation, but there's always a way in if you're patient enough. I waited until someone pulled out, slipped through behind them, and made my way to the community office. That's where I met her. Karen Whitmore, head of the HOA. Mid-40s, perfectly styled hair, tennis outfit that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. The kind of person who smiles like she's already decided how the conversation is going to end. I introduced myself, kept it polite, told her I lived just behind the ridge, explained what I found, and showed her the footage. She barely watched 10 seconds of it. Then she leaned back in her chair, folded her hands like she was about to deliver a statement at a press conference, and said, "Well, that area has always been a bit of a gray boundary. Our contractors likely assumed it was part of the shared land buffer." I blinked at her, honestly thought I misheard. "Gray boundary?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Those fence posts have been there longer than this entire neighborhood." She smiled, not apologetic, not even defensive, just dismissive. "If it's causing you inconvenience," she said, "we can have someone come out and push the debris further down the slope." Further down my slope. That's when it clicked. This wasn't confusion. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was entitlement dressed up in polite language. I remember leaning forward just a little, resting my hands on her desk. Not aggressive, just enough to make sure she heard me clearly. "That's my land," I said. "Not shared, not gray, mine. And what you're calling debris is trash." For the first time, her smile tightened. I told her they had 7 days. 7 days to clear everything out, completely. After that, I'd handle it my way. She gave a small nod, like she was humoring me, like I'd just filed a complaint about a noisy dog or a misplaced mailbox. And right there, I knew they weren't going to do a damn thing. I walked out of that office feeling something shift inside me. Not anger, not exactly. Something quieter, more focused. Because when people show you how little they respect you, sometimes the only way to respond is to speak in a language they actually understand. And I had just enough land and just enough patience to make sure they did. I didn't do anything right away, and that was intentional. People think retaliation is about speed, about hitting back quick while you're still mad. But the truth is, the slower you move, the more precise you can be. And I wasn't interested in making a scene. I wanted to make a point. Day 1 passed, nothing. Day 3, still nothing. By day 5, I took a walk down to the fence again, just to see if maybe they'd at least send someone to look at it. Nope. The pile was still there, already starting to settle into the ground like it belonged. Grass clippings turning brown, branches drying out, bits of construction debris catching the wind and scattering deeper into my woods. It was starting to rot, and not just physically. By day 7, I already knew what the answer was. They weren't going to clean it up. And what bothered me most wasn't even the trash anymore. It was the certainty behind it. The way they just assumed I'd either deal with it myself or give up, like I was background noise to their neighborhood, something inconvenient but ignorable. So on day 8, I got to work. Now I've spent enough time on my land to understand how things grow out here. What thrives, what spreads, what takes over if you let it. Most people see weeds as a nuisance. I see them as survivors, aggressive, adaptable, relentless. And if there's one thing those Silver Ridge lawns weren't built for, it was anything unpredictable. I rented a commercial-grade wood chipper and compost shredder from a place about 20 miles out. Big machine, loud as hell, the kind that makes your neighbors wonder what you're up to. I had it delivered right to the edge of my property, near the trail that runs parallel to their fence line. Took me the better part of a full day to process everything they dumped. Feeding branches into the chipper, grinding down clumps of grass, breaking apart the bigger debris into something usable. By the end of it, that ugly pile of waste had turned into a rich, dense layer of organic material. But that was just the base. A couple years back, I made the mistake of not controlling a patch of wild growth on the far side of my land, and I learned real quick what happens when certain plants take hold. Most people around here have heard of it, but they don't really understand it until they see it up close. It doesn't just grow, it consumes, climbs, spreads, suffocates anything in its path. Along with that, I gathered seeds from dandelions, crabgrass, and a few other fast-spreading plants that had no business being anywhere near a curated suburban lawn. Now, before anyone says it, yeah, I knew exactly what I was doing. This wasn't about destruction, it was about balance. They gave me their waste, I was just returning it in a form that made sense for the land. I mixed everything together, the shredded compost, the seeds, a bit of moisture to help it settle. Took my time with it, measured out the spread. I wasn't dumping it randomly, I was placing it right along the fence line, right where their perfect grass met my property. And then I used my tractor. Slow, steady passes, making sure it was even, not spilling over, not crossing the boundary. I respected the line more than they ever did. By the time I finished, it didn't look like much, just a dark, freshly laid strip of soil running behind their yards. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, but I knew what was coming. And then I waited. First week, nothing noticeable, maybe a few tiny green shoots starting to peek through if you knew where to look. The weather warmed up a little, got a bit more humid, perfect conditions. By the second week, that's when things started to shift. It began subtly, a patch here, a patch there, little bursts of green that didn't quite match the uniform look of their lawns. At first you could mistake it for overgrowth, something their landscaping crews just hadn't gotten to yet. But it didn't stop. Every day, it pushed a little further. The kudzu started climbing the fence posts, wrapping around them like it had been waiting years for something to hold on to. Dandelions popped up in clusters, bright yellow dots breaking through that carefully maintained sea of green. Crabgrass spread low and wide, filling in gaps faster than anything they could spray. And the thing about those kinds of plants, once they take root, they don't ask for permission. They just keep going. I was out there one morning, about 2.5 weeks in, just standing by the tree line with my coffee, watching it happen. You could actually see the difference now. Their side, still trying to hold on to that clean, trimmed look. My side, alive, messy, thriving. And right at the edge, where those two worlds met, chaos. That same afternoon, I heard it. Voices. Not the usual quiet conversations or kids playing. This was sharper, louder, frustrated. I walked up a bit closer, staying on my side of the fence, and that's when I saw them. 2 homeowners, maybe a third just walking up, all staring down at the ground like it had personally offended them. One of them pointed at a stretch of yard where the grass had started to buckle under the spread of weeds. "What is that?" he snapped. Another one kicked at it, like that would somehow fix it. I didn't say anything at first, just stood there long enough for them to notice me. When they did, the look on their faces was almost confused, like they hadn't fully connected the dots yet. Then one of them, tall guy, polo shirt tucked in way too tight, stepped closer to the fence. "Hey," he called out, trying to sound casual but failing. "You got something growing over there that's bleeding into our yards." I took a sip of my coffee, let the silence sit for a second. "Yeah," I said finally, "nature tends to do that." He frowned. "No, this isn't normal. This is invasive." I nodded slowly. "Could be." Another guy chimed in, more irritated. "You need to get that under control. It's spreading." And there it was. Not a question, not even a request, a demand. I couldn't help it. I smiled a little. "Funny," I said. "I was told that area was kind of a gray zone." That landed. You could see it in their faces, that flicker of recognition, followed immediately by something else. Annoyance. Maybe even a little concern. "That's not what this is about," the first guy shot back. "Seems related," I said. They didn't have a response for that. Not a real one. So, they did what people like that usually do when they lose control of a conversation. They escalated it. By the next day, I got the call. Karen. Her voice wasn't as polished this time. Still controlled, but there was an edge to it now. "We've received multiple complaints," she said, skipping any kind of greeting, "about aggressive plant growth originating from your property." I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window toward the tree line. "Sounds like a natural issue," I said. "This is not natural," she snapped. "This is negligence." I let out a small breath, almost a laugh. "You told me that was a gray area," I said, "so I treated it like one." Silence on the other end, but not the calm kind, the kind that builds pressure. "You need to remove those plants immediately," she said, slower now, more deliberate. "From my land?" I asked. "They are encroaching on ours." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "Kind of like your debris did." That was the moment the tone shifted completely. No more polite framing, no more soft language. "This isn't over," she said. I looked out at the fence, at the greens slowly creeping further into their perfect lines. "No," I said quietly, "it's really just getting started." And when I hung up, I had a feeling they were about to push this further, which was exactly what I was counting on. Now, at that point, I could have stopped. I made my point, right? They were uncomfortable. Their lawns weren't perfect anymore. And for the first time since they moved in, something existed that they couldn't immediately control. But here's the thing about people who are used to getting their way. They don't step back when things get messy. They double down. And that's exactly what they did. 3 days after that call, I found an envelope sitting in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in that same neat, overly careful handwriting I'd seen on the HOA notices taped to the street signs. I already knew what it was before I opened it. Legal letter. Folded clean, printed on thick paper, full of words designed to sound official and intimidating. Formal demand, property encroachment, failure to mitigate invasive growth. All that language people use when they're trying to turn a problem they created into your responsibility. I read the whole thing once, then again, slower. They wanted me to remove all invasive plant life affecting HOA-managed properties within 10 days or face further legal action. I remember just sitting there at my kitchen table for a while, letter in one hand, coffee in the other, staring out at the trees, like I was trying to decide something bigger than what it actually was. Because here's the truth. I don't like conflict. Never have. I like my space, my quiet, my routine. And there was a version of this story where I just handled it. Cleared the plants, cleaned the edge, went back to being the guy behind the fence. But that version didn't sit right. Because it wouldn't fix anything. They'd still see my land as disposable, still treat boundaries like suggestions, and next time it wouldn't be yard waste. It'd be something else. So instead of backing down, I did something they didn't expect. I got organized. Pulled up my property records, county maps, survey lines, everything. Made copies, marked the exact boundary down to the inch. Every fence post, every marker, every reference point. Then I went back through my trail cam footage, clipped the relevant sections, time-stamped everything. 3 homes, 3 separate incidents, same crew, same pattern. It wasn't just dumping, it was repeated, deliberate dumping, and then I made a call of my own. County Environmental Enforcement. Now, I don't know if you've ever dealt with them before, but they don't move fast until they do. I explained the situation, told them what I had, offered to send over the footage. The woman on the phone got real quiet for a second, then she said, "Go ahead and email everything, we'll take a look." That was it. No promises, no urgency, but something in her tone told me this wasn't going to get brushed off. About a week later, a truck pulled up near the edge of my property. County seal on the door. Guy steps out, late 50s maybe, clipboard in hand. The kind of person who's seen every excuse in the book and stopped believing most of them. We walked the fence line together. I showed him the pile, or what was left of it after I'd processed it, showed him the footage on my phone, explained the timeline, the conversation with Karen, the gray zone comment. He didn't say much while I was talking, just nodded here and there, took notes. Then he looked out across the fence at those lawns that were no longer perfect. "You didn't plant all that on their side, did you?" he asked. I shook my head. Didn't cross the line. He gave a small grunt, almost like approval. "All right," he said, "we'll handle it." And just like that, the tone of the whole situation shifted. Because this wasn't neighbor versus neighbor anymore. This was county level. 2 days later, everything exploded. I wasn't there when it happened, but I heard about it from one of the contractors who came back later to fix the mess. Apparently, 2 county vehicles rolled into Silver Ridge mid-morning, right when people were out walking dogs, heading to work, doing whatever they do to maintain that perfect image. They went door to door, not asking questions, issuing citations. Each homeowner involved got hit with a fine, $10,000. The landscaping company, same deal. And not just for dumping, for illegal disposal of construction material, environmental violation, property damage. It stacked up fast. And suddenly, it wasn't a gray area anymore. It was documented, recorded, enforced. Karen tried to push back, from what I heard, argued that it was a misunderstanding, that the contractors acted independently, that the boundary wasn't clearly defined. Didn't matter. The footage shut all of that down. You can explain intent all day long, but video doesn't argue. And then came the cleanup. For the next couple weeks, that neighborhood turned into something I'd never seen before. Trucks going in and out, crews tearing up sections of lawn, hauling away contaminated soil, resodding entire backyards. And the weeds? Yeah, those didn't go quietly. Kudzu had already taken hold in some areas, not full takeover, but enough to make removal a nightmare. Roots tangled deep, vines wrapping around fence posts, creeping into edges they couldn't easily reach. They had to bring in specialists, not just landscapers, but pest control too. Because here's the part nobody thinks about. Where there's dense, fast-growing plant life, there's shelter. And where there's shelter, there are animals. Field mice, mostly. Small, quick, harmless on their own. But when they show up in numbers, that's a whole different problem. I remember one afternoon, standing out by the tree line again, watching a crew dig up a section near one of the fences, and seeing one of those guys jump back when something darted out of the ground. That perfect little world they built, it wasn't so perfect anymore. And through all of that, my land, it thrived. The compost enriched the soil exactly like I thought it would. Growth came in thicker, healthier, not chaotic anymore, just full, alive. A natural barrier formed along the fence, dense enough that you couldn't even see their houses from where I stood. It was quiet again, private the way it used to be, just with a little more history behind it. I never heard from Karen again after that. No calls, no letters, just silence. And honestly, that was enough. Because in the end, this was never about getting even. It was about being seen, about reminding people that just because something sits outside your perfect little boundary doesn't mean it belongs to you. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Some folks who've heard this story say I went too far, that I escalated things, made it worse than it needed to be. Others say I did exactly what needed to be done, that people like that only learn when there are real consequences. And I'll be honest, I still think about that sometimes. Not the fines, not the damage, just that moment when I chose not to let it go. So, I'll leave it to you. If you were in my place, would you have handled it differently? Would you have cleaned it up and moved on? Or would you have made sure they never crossed that line again? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever dealt with neighbors who thought your space didn't matter, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Because sometimes the quietest places have the loudest stories.